Welcome, I'm Rose Aguilar, and this is Your Call's special series, The Authoritarian Playbook. Today, we are spending the hour with Raoul Peck, the acclaimed Haitian filmmaker and director who made I Am Not Your Negro, the award-winning documentary about James Baldwin. For that documentary, Raoul Peck used an uncompleted manuscript by the late writer, poet, and social critic James Baldwin as the foundation to create a timeless and urgent connection between the civil rights era and the Black Lives Matter movement. Raoul Peck's new documentary, Orwell 2+2 = 5, explores how the English novelist, essayist, and critic George Orwell predicted the rise of authoritarianism in his novels 1984 and Animal Farm, and how those warnings are playing out in the United States and around the globe. Orwell 2+2 = 5 also examines how authoritarians come to power and what happens when facts, truth, and history are rewritten in real time. Here is the trailer for Raoul Peck's new documentary.
When I sit down to write a book, I write it because there is some lie that I want to expose.
Again, how many fingers?
My starting point is always a feeling of injustice. The very concept of objective truth is fading out of this world.
I'm going to set down what I dare not say aloud to anyone.
This prospect frightens me much more than bombs. The words democracy, freedom, justice have each of them several different meanings, which cannot be reconciled with one another. Political language is designed to make lies sound truthful.
The love in the air, I've never seen anything like it.
And murder respectable. Freedom is slavery. War is peace. Ignorance is strength. Totalitarianism, if not fought against, could triumph anywhere. Do you begin to see then what kind of world we are creating?
That is the trailer for the new documentary 2+2 = 5. And what you heard there are the words of George Orwell spoken by the actor Damian Lewis. 2+2 = 5 is playing in select theaters beginning on Friday. And we are so happy to be joined by Raoul Peck today, an acclaimed Haitian filmmaker and director of the new documentary, Orwell 2+2 = 5. He also directed the acclaimed HBO 4-part documentary series, Exterminate All the Brutes, which looks at the exploitative and genocidal aspects of European colonialism from America to Africa. His previous films also include the Young Karl Marx, Lumumba, Death of a Prophet, and Haiti, The Silence of the Dogs. Raoul Peck served as Haiti's culture minister in the 1990s. Hi, Raoul. Thank you so much for your work, and thank you for joining us.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. It was very interesting to learn that you weren't sure you wanted to work on a film about Orwell because of your life experience. You were born in Haiti, but your family was forced to flee the Duvalier dictatorship when you were a child in 1961. And then you grew up in what was then the Republic of the Congo, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So can you tell us about how your childhood and experiences living under dictators, which were often supported by the United States, really shaped you and how you see the world?
Well, I always say that, the misuse of language today, what Orwell called newspeak, basically, empty language of its substance to manipulate opinion. I had that strange feeling very early on when I was listening to speeches from President Kennedy about the Peace Corps, about democracy, about the progressive politics he wanted to engage with, while at the same time we were living in a dictatorship supported by the U.S. administration. And in Congo, that was the same. I learned the history of Congo and Lumumba, his assassination by the CIA, and for matters that really today you think is doesn't make sense, basically because they were fearing that Lumumba would go to the communist camp. So I always grew up with a sort of reality that contradict much of the world words I was hearing, or the intentions or the policies I was seeing from part of the Western world. So my doubts were always there. And Orwell, as I remember, studying him in school, was presented as a sort of dystopian writer, somebody who writes about the future, even a science fiction writer, and with the kind of life we were, having in all those countries, we were confronted with reality. Science fiction was some sort of luxury for me, at least.
Right. In an interview you did with Deadline Hollywood, you talk about how your parents used to whisper when they were talking about certain subjects. And even as a child, you realize that something's off here. What is going on?
Yes, that was bizarre. We could be talking normally, and then when the subject would turn, and they would find a way to whisper, and so that I don't listen. Or even when some friends were visiting, there were obviously conversation that not only because to protect me, but because I could repeat them at school, and that would have been problems for them. But also, that the neighbors didn't hear, or the person working in the house would not hear them talking about that. There was suspicion everywhere, every day, everywhere. So my father lost his job basically the next day after the election with no reason, no official reason. But we assumed that because my father was not a partisan, he didn't, kiss the hand of the new king. So yes, I grew up really very alert on those things, and where you don't trust your neighbors anymore. Everything is under suspicion, and that's what happened when language lose its meaning. And
Right.
and where authoritarian is coming in your life, drip by drip, drop by drop.
Raoul, what happens in a society where people do not feel comfortable speaking? You talked about having a writer friend who interviewed scholars who did not want to use their names. And this is today in the United States. We invited a scholar who works at a university in Southern California, and he said, "I'm laying low. I'm not doing any media right now because I'm receiving death threats."
Yes.
What happens when people are afraid to speak in a society?
Well, first of all, it's a sign of the fragility of that society. It's a sign that we are no longer in a normal democracy, or even if we are in a democracy, because when it is the state that is the bully, or let's say part of the state, but the head of the state, who is at the head of this offensive, where you're not supposed to say certain thing, or you're supposed to agree on things that are obviously false. We have basically accepted that somebody could speak about alternative facts when everybody knows that that cannot exist, as do not exist. We are seeing the normalization of political lying. That's as if it's a way to communicate. That's very scary, and I think what people don't realize is that when you don't resist, when you don't speak up, it's not going to go better. It's going to go worse. because by doing so, you push others to fear as well. Because especially when you are in a powerful position, or let's say you are in a powerful lawyer company, or you are a powerful university, or you are a powerful judge, when you submitted to these attacks, and by the way, I don't say that it's easy. It demands civil courage, and by all of us. And it demands also when one of us is attacked, that everybody else should, come at his rescue and defend him or her. That's the key for democracy. We have seen in history how many times, we could talk about Nazi Germany, how within less than 10 years, Hitler had absolute power, and it started by democratic elections. But he found a way to manipulate the system and obtain absolute power. And we are seeing signs of this, that anybody who said, 2+2 = 4, you being held at, or even journalists, when they interrogated any political personality and ask him about different topic, and the person just latch at them, saying, no, 2+2 = 5. You just don't understand. So we are in a very crazy world, and Orwell warned us about that by saying the degradation of language is basically the condition for the degradation of democracy. And we seems to be in the middle of it.
So this all started for you when you got a call from your friend Alex Gibney, another great documentary filmmaker, and he was involved in a project that secured the rights to Orwell's complete body of work, and he wanted you to direct it. And you've said in interviews, well, once I got the call from Alex, I knew I had to jump on this. And then you really changed your opinion of Orwell once you really dove into his life.
Well, it's that to say that, well, we are never too old to learn. And yes, indeed, let's say I knew that I would be able to do a great film about Orwell, especially, giving access to everything he had written, both, a novel, essays, private diaries, letters. It's an incredible body of work, and I would have found a way to make a great film. What I did not suspect is that I would start understanding him differently, not as somebody who wrote about the future, but in fact, somebody who wrote about his life. He wrote about the experience he went through, in colonies time, during him being an officer in Burma of the colonial imperial army, and seeing what abuse mean, abuse of the locals, abuse of the other. Later, when he went to the Spanish War as a volunteer, he saw how his comrades were basically killed because of political dissents and propaganda. So he wrote, he tried to warn us about things he went through. He saw power being abused. He saw the impact of it on normal citizen. And that's where I found a different entry in his work. And the last aspect of it, the fact that he knew my world. He went, he was born in India, had very close, when you grew up elsewhere than your own country, this is this has a tremendous impact to your life, whether you're conscious of it or not. And then he went to Burma at 19, spent 5 years there. So basically, he lived in the third world for a while. So he understood what it meant. He understood what it is to be the other, and I found sympathy in that, because it's like that man had visited my world and understand how the rest of the world live, beyond the Western world.
You learned that he was really ashamed of what he did as a young soldier in Burma.
Absolutely. He was, don't forget, Burma was a colony, a British colony. So that means there was, of course, repression. People did not accept that colony, but it's not because people don't say anything, because they are basically under domination. And you can imagine a 19-year-old, having to do things that are obviously reprehensible if he was doing them in London, but doing in them far away, I can understand that, like young U.S. Marines doing stuff in Vietnam that they were not very proud of, and a lot of them, when they came back, they couldn't speak about that. My own, elder brother went to Vietnam, and he spent like six months not able to speak to his mother, to his relatives, because he was totally traumatized. At the time, we didn't know what PTSD was. So it's something that really touched me. The fact that not only Orwell, thought about his role, but also wrote about it in the 30s, in the time where there were still colonies everywhere, and he was not afraid to tell his mind, what he thought about that experience, and that I admire him for that.
What was it like to spend so much time with his words and his work? It is so interesting to hear his own his words throughout the film, which are spoken by the actor Damian Lewis.
Yes, well, it was a kind of sometimes out of body experiment, because I never, even though I suspect that, but I never thought that his words would be so impactful to describe what we are going through today in our world, not only here in the United States, but in many other countries where there are, the extreme right is getting more and more, power. Dissent is being repressed everywhere. The press is being manipulated everywhere. People use the term election or rig in order to put a question mark on any attempt to do a democratic election. The role of the media that are being bought by billionaires everywhere. So there is a sort of planetary control, both in the West and in the East and in many other countries. So and Orwell have analyzed that to the detail, and it's scary how right, not that he was, but he still is.
And you obviously started this film before the presidential election. I mean, you had no idea that Trump was going to win.
Yes, he did. And somebody asked me, if it was prescience that we start making the film because of that. No, I started making the film about 4 years ago. So we had no idea. In fact, I thought Kamala Harris would be president today. But I always felt that the film would have been as impactful because what we are living today, it did not start with Donald Trump. What we lived the last 40 years at least, allowed Donald Trump to become president. So we should, ask ourselves, how did we come here? And the signs again have been coming bits by bits. The renouncement to certain important elements of democracy brought us here, and it's like you open a lot of small doors, and then after a while you just realize, oh my God, this is how far we got into this. You don't see it coming. But if we analyze how the evolution of the press. Again, I'm not accusing journalists per se, but as an institution, we start accepting things that we should not have accepted. Take a public debate. At the moment, the format of putting somebody from the left and somebody from the right and just watch them having a fight. This is not journalism for me. This is, opinion debate. This is, it's not sitting on anything really solid. Sometimes you just need people who know what they are talking about, independently of their political position. But to have, a clearer view of a debate or a problem or something important in the life of the city. And we have that less and less. The time allowed it's shorter. We have seen, I'm old enough to have seen how the time for, let's say, normal, profound discussion on radio, TV, elsewhere was more and more reduced, and how we went full throttle toward entertainment,
Right.
and that has an impact, whether we like it or not. So to just judge what we are living here today is really a very shortcut in the analysis. We should go back a few decades to see what was the journey that brought us here.
Well, I was going to ask you what your thoughts are about media, because we decided to start this weekly Authoritarian Playbook series because we didn't think enough media coverage was really meeting this moment. So what are your thoughts on the media? And then did your thinking about media change after making this film?
Well, I've been working on this for some years now. In 2000, I made a film called Profit and Nothing But. And I show how, in particular in France, how basically all majors belong to a few billionaires or a few, companies, investors. And you can see, whether it's book edition, radio, private TVs, magazines, etc. I had a graphic where you could see who owns what, and of course it goes through multiple different percentage of ownership, but still you could see that it came down to a few entities. And when a few entities have all those media organs, of course, what you do, and that's what you do in capitalism, to augment your profit, you rationalize. That's the term they call. But in fact, you lay out people, you make what they call synergy. And synergy basically means, okay, we can do apply the same thing for all of our medias. So of course, you spend less money, you get more productivity, like they say, but you also make one kind of opinion, the principle, and there is less dissent, there is less diversity, etc., etc. And I've seen it. The film I'm talking about is 2000, wow. And it didn't come, that's 25 years ago.
That's incredible.
So that's where we are today.
It's called Profit and Nothing But, and if you do a search on it, you can find the entire documentary. On today's Your Call, we continue our new series, The Authoritarian Playbook, by spending the hour with Raoul Peck, the acclaimed Haitian filmmaker whose new film is Orwell 2+2 equals 5. It examines how George Orwell's novels foretold a chilling, all-too-believable authoritarian future. And if you have any questions for Raoul Peck about his new film, if you have read Orwell's books, and you'd like to talk about how they're relevant to what we're seeing today in the United States and around the globe, we'd love to hear from you. 866-798-8255. You can also email yourcall@kalw.org. We'll be back after this. This is Your Call. I'm Rose Aguilar. Today we continue our series, The Authoritarian Playbook. You can find all of our shows at kalw.org, click news, and then Your Call. We're spending the hour with the acclaimed Haitian filmmaker Raoul Peck. We're talking about his new documentary, Orwell 2+2 = 5. It explores how authoritarians come to power and examines how Orwell's novels 1984 and Animal Farm foretold a chilling, all-too-believable authoritarian future. You can join us at 866-798-8255. You can also email your call at kalw.org. Orwell 2+2 = 5 opens in theaters on October 10th. Find more information, kalw.org, click news and your call. Raoul, let's spend some time talking about the Orwellian concept of newspeak and how it alters truth and facts. And again, listening to you do some interviews, things are moving so fast that I completely forgot about Kellyanne Conway, who was Trump's campaign manager the first time around, saying we use alternative facts. When she was on Meet the Press in January 2017, she was defending the White House press secretary, Sean Spicer, saying that at Trump's inauguration, they saw the largest audience ever. And so it brings up so many things. First off, this alternative facts, but so many of us forget this because so much is happening so quickly.
That's how they get us, because sometimes that's so absurd that we tend to laugh about it. But the thing is, the next day, they will say something even more concerning, and we will laugh again. But meanwhile, we are lowering our guards. We are lowering our capacity of judgment. It's like it's what bullies does. They attack you once, and you don't resist. And the next day they can go further. There is no limit for that, So, and there is no limit to lying. If you make a first lie and people swallow it and it doesn't seem to have a big impact, and the next day you basically can do another bigger lie, And that's this, how do you say, a degradation bit by bit. People think that authoritarian regime install themselves by just one big boom and then that's there. No, it's the day by day renouncement of resistance or or even neutrality. Orwell says something that I believe as well totally, is that there cannot be neutrality. There cannot be a sort of statu quo, because that itself is a political position, and sometimes we don't realize that, or we hope that somebody else will bring a response to whatever we are confronted with. No, it's the work of every one of us as citizens. Being a citizen in a democracy means that you are informed and you are educated to be able to take part in the discussion of this democracy. And your job is to renew it every day, because it's a living thing. It's not something that you acquire like you acquire a box of cornflakes. It's something that is that has to kept alive, and that means you have to agree on certain things, on the meaning of language, the meaning of terms. Or do we use the same vocabulary? That your show is called the Authoritarian Toolbox, but that's exactly what it is. It's part of the authoritarian toolbox to try to impose you that 2+2 = 5, and your job is to think and say, no, 2+2 is 4. It was never 5. But if you swallow that one day, you swallow that the next day, and then the gate are open, and that's something that we don't, because we live in countries that are more or less, quote unquote peaceful, but that's not true. That peace itself come at a heavy price for most the rest of the world. You know, our telephone that we use is costing the life of many young Congolese children because of the content that we have in our phones. And you can multiply that impact. COVID has shown us how connected we are, but connected in a very unbalanced way. That there are ones who are on top and others that are on the bottom and are basically, having the brunt of the weight of all this.
Right. And then talking about newspeak, what the United States does and has done in the Middle East is another horrible example of this. We're going to bring democracy to you by bombing you and killing your civilians when you think about Afghanistan and Iraq. And you actually include that in the documentary Orwell 2+2 = 5. So let's hear a clip. This is around the section War is Peace. And these are the words of George Orwell spoken by the actor Damian Lewis. And in this clip, you'll also hear George W. Bush and Colin Powell.
A society becomes totalitarian when its structure becomes flagrantly artificial. That is, when its ruling class has lost its function, but succeeds in clinging to power by force or fraud. But to be corrupted by totalitarianism, one does not have to live in a totalitarian country.
Tonight, I want to take a few minutes to discuss a grave threat to peace. The threat comes from Iraq. It arises directly from the Iraqi regime's own actions, its history of aggression, and its drive toward an arsenal of terror.
We are at war with the people of Eurasia, the vile and ruthless aggressors who have committed countless atrocities and who are guilty of every bestial crime a human being can commit. They have laid waste our land, destroyed our factories, looted our homes, massacred our children, and raped our women.
When Iraq finally admitted having these weapons in 1995, the quantities were vast. Less than a teaspoon of dry anthrax, a little bit about this amount. This is just about...
This kind of thing happens everywhere, but it is clearly likelier to lead to outright falsification in societies where only one opinion is permissible at any given moment.
That is a clip from Raoul Peck's new documentary, Orwell 2+2 = 5. It opens in select theaters on Friday. There are so many absurdities, Raoul, when you sit back and think about everything from the horror of saying that we're bringing democracy to a country that the United States is actually bombing, to something so ridiculous as Kellyanne Conway talking about alternative facts. And what's frightening is that society gets used to this and then the needle moves once again. Yeah. How could a society respond to this language, this double language, as you call it, and Orwell called it?
Well, it's first of all, it's clear that totalitarianism can happen in a non-totalitarian country, like we are seeing it here in the United States or in some European countries. And what we need, of course, it's lucidity and civic vigilance. I was at Yale University last week, and it was shocking. One young student had to, stood up and say, how do we respond to the fact that the school administration is basically declaring that they are now neutral, and that inside a university where it's supposed to be the most protected place where young people can learn about, how the world is ruled, about, getting informed, educated, etc., and where debate is important, where you learn to debate, where you learn to confront ideas that are maybe not yours, but to find a way to have a discussion. And when this is not even possible in that protected arena, that can make you worry, because again, when he says that in Orwell, for Orwell, the writer's mission is to alert, to document, to resist, through clarity. That means, the job of the intelligence is to be that bulwark, to make sure that 2 and 2 equal 4, and not be just imposed as a different arithmetic equation, So yes, it's we can't wait for some, personality or savior to save us from this. It's about us as Democrats, as Democrat, not in the sense of the party, but as human being. Basically, we are seeing there are not many elected officials that are in power right now that when you hear them speaking, I never feel that they are speaking about the whole country. About, when you're elected, you're not elected for the people on your side who voted for you. You're elected for everybody. That's what democracy is. Because that imposes, if your candidate is not elected, that you're not fearful that there will be retribution against you. Otherwise, when you come to power at your turn, you're going to do the same, because you have seen there is a precedent how power was abused to impose certain things of very partisan position. So, and it's important that younger people understand that, and they have a role in that, because that's their future that is at stake right now.
Today on Your Call, it's our Authoritarian Playbook. We're spending the hour with the acclaimed Haitian filmmaker Raoul Peck. His new documentary, Orwell 2+2 = 5, examines how George Orwell's novels 1984 and Animal Farm foretold a chilling, all-too-believable authoritarian future. Orwell 2+2 = 5 opens in select theaters on Friday. We have a number of calls, so let's go through a few of them, and then we'll get responses from Raoul. Let's go to Elizabeth in San Francisco. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for holding.
Yes, hello. I'm also Chilean American, and what Raoul is saying, it resonates very clearly with the experiences that people lived in Chile. Just like he also mentioned that you don't have to have an authoritarian government necessarily to be authoritarian. In the case of Chile, of course, it came about in the coup. But I really also agree completely with his position that it didn't just happen overnight. This is more than 40 years, actually, has been going on. And in Chile, the results have been devastating because the educational system completely made people very uncritical of history and not aware. And in fact, it affected even the elections for a new constitution, where people literally believed lies that the right wing was saying about the new constitution that was being worked. And I lived under the dictatorship only during the last 3 years of the dictatorship, but the effects of the dictatorship continued in many ways. And here in the United States as well, the terminology that is used that turns people's heads and makes people get really confused, like No Child Left Behind, which reduces instead of supports all children, and many other kinds of terminology that's used. And 40 years, it's true. It's been 40 years, and there's been a lot of, from both Democratic and Republican parties. Right now, I used to work at the University of California, and the universities are being attacked as well, where they're demanding names of people who participated in protests or who present civil rights complaints. They're demanding, they're just keeling over, to this administration. And it's not only this administration, though. This has been a long time coming, unfortunately.
Well, thank you for the comment, Elizabeth, and we'll get a response from Raoul after we take a few more calls. Let's go to Peter in San Francisco. Hi, Peter. Welcome to the show.
Yes, hi. Thanks for having this program. One of the things I still remember from reading in 1984, a long time ago, I think I'm remembering correctly that there was a television that basically had a camera facing the watcher. And that seemed so far-fetched in terms of surveillance, and yet that's exactly what seems to be happening with standard issue screens. And my second point is that it seems to me that the internet is a very dangerous, in a way, for social cohesion and understanding about what's real and what's not, especially with AI, where no editor, no fact checker, no nothing is necessary for people to publish, as it were, all kinds of misunderstandings, misinformation, disinformation, erroneous information, and also propaganda. What happens with AI, especially when somebody who wants to smear the opposition and make them say things that they didn't or do things that they didn't? How does anybody know whether that's a real clip of somebody's past, what they've said or what they're currently saying, versus what they're actually standing for? So I think that the whole media environment is both increasingly unreliable, but also making people start to doubt even any kind of media and wonder, is anybody telling the truth, and what is the difference between a reliable and a not reliable source?
Right.
The Section 230 that relieves the publishers, as it were, from any kind of accountability for stuff that they push out to the public is also problematic as compared with traditional media, which are accountable for things like libel.
Well, thank you for the call, Peter. In the documentary 2+2=5, in the section around ignorance is strength, we do see a few interviews with Trump supporters who are brought facts, the interviewers bringing actual facts to the table, and they just will not believe them no matter what. So the film also touches on what you just laid out there, and we'll get Raoul to respond in just a minute. Let's go to Greg in Palo Alto. Hi, Greg.
Hello. The issue that you brought up about alternative facts and Kellyanne Conway, that is almost a harmless example of alternative facts. What I think is more serious is the fact that I don't think you can believe a word that comes out of Trump's mouth. So when Trump makes the claim that, like, Portland, Chicago, Memphis, Los Angeles, they're on fire, rampant crime, it's just like these cities are in chaos. They're about to fall apart. I think the reason that he's doing this is so that he can set himself up in a position to invoke the Insurrection Act and then use the military, under whatever, martial law, whatever you want to call it. And to me, that's a more glaring example of alternative facts. Everything he's saying about these cities is false. It's just absolutely false. So that, to me, and he's got the military willing to go along with him on this. So I think that unless that can get stopped, then we're really headed towards some really bad times.
Well, thank you for the call, Greg. Let's hear from one more caller, Peter in Florida. Hi, Peter. Thanks for holding.
Hi. The previous caller, Greg, and the previous caller to him, also Peter from San Francisco, are just making the same points I would make. And I would just add to that, it's like to adding to like the Big Brother, I said the internet is like Big Brother on steroids. If you think about it, it's like even when you think about, like, remember you talked about Alcatraz, turning Alcatraz into this. What was that? That was on Tuesday. What happened on Wednesday? You're just being barraged with information that isn't followed up on. And I don't know if Orwell would probably be like that. The inundation with whimsical ideas, and some of them are dangerous, and some are worth pursuing and getting a handle on. Other ones, just let them roll off your back. They don't mean anything. You don't know what's important in this world is what's scary too.
Right. Well, thank you, Peter. What about that one, Raoul? I'm sure you've heard this from your colleagues and friends. People are saying they don't know what to do because things are happening so quickly.
I think we forget, or maybe the younger generation today forget how to resist. And we have a very close example during the civil rights movement. We had people from different races, gender, religion, you know, blacks, Jews, white, young, old, you know, all different, you know, Catholic, evangelic, all those people, they sat down, all those organizations. It was hard, you know, to come to a common ground, but they did the job. They had big discussion. There were even friendships that were fractured. But at the end of the day, they decided on a strategy and they start bringing response. Young people decided to go to the South to educate, to try to talk to people while knowing quite well they might be killed, tortured, arrested. They did that. So whatever we want to do today will ask of us to again start talking to each other. There are a multitude of organizations in this country who have, you know, of the civil society, who are doing the work, sometimes very lonely, sometimes without any funding. And each one of us, I'm sure, have at least a list of 10 of them. You know, maybe they are in your neighborhood or in the next city, the next town. It's important to talk to each other, to come to a common ground. And it's not about what party you belong, it's about common sense. Because what is going on will not have an end if we resign every day. Because that's how authoritarian regime take their power finally. It's like when everybody is looking at the emperor or the king or whatever we want to call him, and say, well, he's not naked. He's 2 + 2 = 5. And then what we don't realize, it's not a joke. It's not a rehearsal. It's life right now. It's happening. You know, there will not be a replay. Each day we lose in false discussion, in trying to respond to every crazy things that come out from this person. We are losing time because that was the idea from the start, to flood the zone. I'm not inventing that. It's formulated as a strategy. We are going to flood the zone. That means we are going to make you so tired, you will not know what's up, what is down, and you will be lost, and your response will be totally annihilated. So it's a scary time. And I'm pretty sure, we were listening to this woman from Chile, and I can give you hundreds of examples. People who have, grown up in dictatorship, or who have seen a democratic regime basically crumble within a few months. They know those signs. I know those signs because I saw them in many different countries. I know what it is to suddenly having to remain silent because you are in a subway. I can give you a very personal example. During September 11, I was living in New York, and I remember I cried like everybody else. I was shocked like everybody else, and the whole planet was shocked, except a few crazy people. But everybody, if you're a human being, there is no way you cannot be touched and alarmed and in a very impacted by this. But I remember within 2-3 weeks, I was basically pushed to accept any craziness that, like we should go there and kill everybody, women, children, and whoever they are, that kind of craziness. Then suddenly I felt that my own tragedy, my own sadness, my own sorrow was taken away from me. And they were asking me to follow a flag blindly and to go and kill people ourselves. And that's what society is. We have to be able to talk about that. And I remember I was at friend's house, or I went to the barber shop in Brooklyn, and I could hear people who have themselves been victim of these abuse were talking openly of doing the same abuse to people on the other side of the ocean, you know? And that's why we have to be very humble, very modest, have the courage to reflect on our own decisions or our own inaction or our own blind action sometimes, you know? That's what makes us a society, independent of who we vote for, and independent of our color, gender, or sexuality, etc. And we have been losing that the last 40, 50 years. And it's getting harder every day. So that's where we need the necessity of starting to talk with each other again.
Raoul Peck is an acclaimed Haitian filmmaker and director of the new documentary Orwell 2+2 = 5. It examines how Orwell's novels foretold a chilling, all-too-believable authoritarian future. Orwell 2+2 = 5 opens in select theaters on Friday. Raoul, thank you so much for your very important body of work. Thank you for joining us, and we'd love to have you back.
Thank you. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. Thanks to Johanna Miyake for producing today's show. Thanks to Kevin Vance for engineering our show. And you can find all of our shows, The Authoritarian Playbook, KALW.org. Click News and then Your Call. And thank you for joining us. I'm Rose Aguilar. It's Your Call.
Coming up. First, this news.